Hello friends, welcome back. My name is Jaspreet and today I'll be showing you how I make my Peacock platter, but that's not the focus of this video. The main focus is the prep and the planning that goes into making a piece this size now, especially if you are hand rolling your slab. Now, I don't have a slab roller. I roll out all my slabs. So whenever I have to make larger pieces, and this is a decently large piece and it's a long piece of slab, it's important to think about how you're going to slice your clay, how you're going to roll out your clay, what thickness it has to be. There's a little bit of planning that goes into the process. I'm going to talk a lot about that, show you how I do that. And this is especially useful when you're making multiples of a piece. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And obviously, then I'll take you through the process of making this platter. So let's get started. All right, so here's my clay block. This is fresh out of the bag and it's nice and soft. Here. Now, because I have to make a platter which is this long, this is about, I think, 16, 17, 18 inches long. I have to roll out my clay in a way that I get a long slab. Now, if I was making a rounder platter, then I would cut and roll my clay in a slightly different way. But here my focus is very clear. I need a platter which is long. So I need to make sure that I'm rolling out my clay in a way that I get a long slab of clay. The other thing I have to remember is that for my platters this size, I am going to use a slab which is a quarter of an inch thickness. And that works perfectly well for me. I have made over 40-50 pieces of this size and I've not had any issues with warping or cracking. And of course, because I dry them really slowly and I compress and do all the things, they usually work well for me. So my slab thickness is a quarter of an inch. Okay. Now, before I roll this, I have to first cut my slab, slice my slab into smaller pieces so I can roll it easily. I can't really hand roll this entire slab on my table. I don't think I can do it. So what I like to do is I like to slice off my clay, my block into smaller pieces and then roll those pieces separately. Now for these platters, what I've seen that works best, and because I know I have to make a bunch of these, I'm going to make multiples of these. I'm going to take one block of clay and then on the sides, I've used these measuring sticks or paint sticks, which are, so each of these is about a quarter of an inch thickness. This is 0.25 inches in thickness. When you add two of these, this becomes 0.5 inch. Okay, so this is half an inch in thickness and same on this side. So these are my thickness strips to make sure I get a nice even slab thickness, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with slicing my block off into half-inch thick slabs, smaller slabs, and then I will roll them in a way that I get a long slab, which is a quarter of an inch in thickness. Is it making sense? I hope it is. Let me just show you what I'm talking about, and probably that will make more sense. All right, now to cut my slabs, what I'm going to do is this is half an inch on both sides. Okay, I place it very close to my slab, my block of clay, and then I'm supporting the sticks from the side I'm standing against my body. I'm just holding on to this, they don't move. And then with the clay wire tool that is used for slicing clay, cutting clay, I'm going to take this, stretch it out over these measuring sticks, and then slice through the clay. And that is why you need a little bit of support at the end of the stick so that they don't move. Okay, so that's one slice, right? That will give me okay, so I'm going to just pull this away. So now this is a slab which is at least half an inch in thickness. This will be rolled further to make a longer slab which will be a quarter of an inch in thickness. Is it making sense? Okay, so that's one done. I'm going to put this back in here. Now because I have to make multiples of these, I'm going to slice them, roll it out, roll out my slabs, and then start making. That's how I'll usually do. Again, I'm just stretching my cutting wire and then slicing through the clay while keeping these as my supports on the side. Okay, this will usually give me 5 to 6 slabs. Okay, that's done. On my table I have a little board underneath here. If you can see, there is this board which I've covered with some canvas, because canvas will absorb the extra moisture and it will just help me cut and roll my slab easily. Okay, So now I've got 5 blocks of clay, 5 slabs of clay, which are at least half an inch in thickness. Okay. And I'm going to start rolling them now. To roll out these slabs, again, like I said, I'm just going to bring in one here. As I mentioned earlier, now these will be rolled in only one direction because I need a long slab. This is not going to be enough for my platter. This is the form I have. It's not going to be enough for this, right? So I need to roll it in a way that it elongates. So this is half an inch in thickness. Okay, I'm going to remove quarter of an inch on both sides. So now I have these 2 sticks which are quarter of an inch in thickness, and that will help me stretch the slab to quarter of an inch thickness and elongate it at the same time. Yeah, so I'm using this massive rolling pin. This is the one that I use to roll out my clay. So I'll show you how I do this. This goes here, this goes here. Okay, one roll, and I'm going to lift this from my board, flip it over, and then again roll one way and then this way. Okay, why am I doing that? Because I don't want the clay to get stuck on the board, on the cloth underneath, and not move at all when I'm rolling my clay, when I'm rolling my pin. So just pull, place it back in. Okay, and then bringing my rolling pin, then up and one way down. Okay, it's getting closer to quarter of an inch. I think it's almost there. I'm going to just, this is probably maybe the last one that I have to do. I know the cloth moves underneath, that's okay. I'm not really bothered with that. Okay, this way and this way. So with the measuring sticks, you tend to get a nice even slab, and that's step number 1, making sure you don't get warped platters, right? Now, when I come back and I have a slab which is long enough to fit this platter, right? And that was the objective to begin with. So I started with a clay slab which was shorter in length, but it was thick enough that I could roll it into a longer slab and thin enough to make my platter. So that's how you roll your slabs. That's why it's important to understand and plan before you start making that. What is it that you're making? Now, if you wanted to make mugs out of this slab, you could do that. But if you wanted to make a large round platter, you could not use this to make a round platter, right? So that's why it's important to kind of plan a little bit, especially when you're making slightly, longer pieces like this. So that's my slab done. I'm going to just remove this and move on to the next stage. Okay, the next thing I'll do is just get rid of this canvas texture, this canvas cloth, so that we can continue with the process of making. Now, when I place this back here, I can see that I don't need some of the excess on the sides. So I'm going to just cut off those extra clay, just so it's easy for me to manage the platter, the slab. Okay, just cutting this extra. I don't need this. Now I'll just remove the canvas cloth and put everything back in place so we can continue making and show you how I make this platter. Okay, so here's a slab now ready to make things with. I'm going to first start with compressing the clay, right? With my yellow shell mud tool rib, I'm going to just go over the clay surface and compress it nice. Ouch, compress it nicely. Flip it over and do the same on this side. That is done. First thing I'll do is get my texture in. Now for the texture, I'm going to be using a silicone mat. This is silicone mat I'll be using to make my peacock pattern. If I can find it, I will definitely link it for you. Okay, so if you're using the mat for the first time, add a little bit of cornstarch onto your clay surface in your mat, so it's easy to peel off. But as you can see, there's enough clay dust on top of this. I've used this to make multiple, so I don't need to add more cornstarch. I think I'm good. So I'm going to just try and place it a little bit in the center. I know I haven't marked anything out yet, and that's okay because I've made this multiple times. So I just place it here, and then using my pony roller, go over the texture, just making sure it's nicely captured in clay. Okay. Now, Just lifting from one side. Ah, my clay is really soft. It's stuck. Ooh. Okay. Maybe using a needle tool or a pin tool may be a good idea at this point. This is still not coming off. Okay. There you have it. Did I get a nice impression? Nice enough, not really good. So here it's a little bit lighter, but that's okay. I'm not going to go over it again. It should be okay. It'll work. So that's your texture in clay. Now, what I'm going to do before I do anything else is clean off all of these lines here. I don't like them in my clay, so I'll just take care of them right here. I could have pressed the texture in a little harder, but I'm going to roll with it for now. Okay. Just get rid of that line on the side of the edge of the mat. Okay, and then I'm just getting rid of this extra texture that I see here. Clean fingers, not even damp actually at this point, just clean fingers, and I'm just going over the clay surface. Not entirely sure where this texture came from. Maybe I need to clean my mat. Okay, so I spent a couple of minutes just cleaning off the sides here. Honestly, it won't show with the glazes that I'll be using, but well, another thing you can do is take your nice soft rib and then just go over these lines here. So it's all clean. Okay. All right. So once that's done, now I'm going to first release this from the board because it has stuck, given that I've pressed it in nicely. I'm going to just release it from the board. Okay. Now the next step is bringing this in and placing it on top. Again, I just eyeball it just to see, make sure that it's sitting inside. Okay. I think that should work. Okay. The next step is cutting out the clay slab. Now, if I go in with my needle tool tracing the edge here, I'll not get a nice rim. I'll not get that rim on the side. It'll be a really small thin rim. So what I'm going to do is bring in my fancy tool, which is my needle tool, and this packing peanut. Now this is, when you're looking for it, a lot of people have asked me where I got this and how I can find this. I think you should look for a star styrofoam or a star packing peanut. You should be able to find it. But I got this in some package, I think, that was delivered. So I use this to make the edge, like create a little bit of an edge around the mold here, this wooden form. And that gives me a little bit of that rim. Okay. So I'm going to start here and you'll see how this works. Oh, it's making marks on my clay. Did I push it too hard? It's okay. We can always get rid of that. Okay. But this gives me a really nice border around the edge of the platter, and that's what I need this to do. Oh my god, this is so good. Okay, and then you can just pull this out. If you want to create a footring, you can use this. I'm not going to make any footring, so for me this is done. Okay, now I'm going to just lift this. Once I've traced everything, you'll see that this made some scratches on the surface. Not to worry, we'll fix that right now. Again with a damp finger, I'm going to just go over the clay surface and at the same time soften the edge as well, which I like to do in any case. So I'll do that and I'll take care of these marks that the packing peanut just made. I think I got too aggressive with it. Okay, so I'm just smoothing off the edges here. I like to push them down a little bit, soften them up. Okay, and compress the edges and take care of that extra texture from the packing peanuts. Okay, just taking care. That's all done. I think we've cleaned up all of the texture. Now the next step is placing this back on, this time with the slanted side facing down. Okay. Now the question that's going to come up is, where do you get this form? I got this from a local art store. It was in their wooden plaque section. I've not been able to find it online, so nothing I can do about it. But once I've placed this here, I'm going to just check around the edges to make sure it is centered. Okay. Just both sides are equidistant, and it's more of an eyeball thing. You're just eyeballing it, at least I do. And also before I flip, I'm just going to release the sides a little bit so that it's easy for the clay to just flop over the form. So I'm just lifting from the sides because just press them down when I was trying to compress the rim. You'll see how it's sticking to the board. That's okay. Like I said, my clay is kind of soft for this, but we can fix all of those things. So I'm just kind of going around the edges, making sure it's lifted from the board and not stuck onto the board. I didn't want to release it from the board, lift it from the board completely, because that would have stretched out the clay a little bit more, and then it wouldn't really fit the form so well. Okay, so once that's done, then it's time to flip. Again, removing everything away. I'm going to flip and come back. All right, here we are with our flipped clay. Now I'm going to start first with just pressing this lightly against the form so that it finds that shape there, that straight edge on this side and the straight edge on this side. Okay, but I'm making sure not to press at the edge here where it's folding, because that could be a weak point. Just lightly pressing these in to confirm to the shape of the mold underneath. Same with this side. Okay, just press it. Then I bring in my red rib and just quickly smoothen out the back here, clean it up nicely. Okay, very gently going around the sides here to make sure that my slab conforms to the shape of the mold underneath. That's all. Now, once this is done, I'm going to add my signature. I know this is the top, so I'm going to add my signature here. I'm not adding the signature here at the base in the center, because as I press this in clay, some of the texture will get a little lighter. It will press down. So I'm just doing it here because I know this is where the peacock head is and doesn't have much texture here. So I'm just taking that. And okay, that's my signature done there. Okay. Now I'm going to let this set up on this for some time. Again, how long will depend on how hot or humid your studio is. For me, it's going to take, and because it's a really soft slab, I think it's going to take at least an hour before I can flip it over, if not more. And then I'll flip it over and show you what it looks like, and then we'll do a quick cleanup of the edges. Okay, so here's our platter. It has had quite some time to set up actually. It's quite nice and stiff, just the way I like it. I'm going to bring another board and place it on top of this in a way that I cover the base completely. Yeah, I think that's good. And then we flip it over. Okay, and now I'm going to lightly push the clay away from the mold so that it releases the mold, because it's been sitting on top for some time. It's kind of stuck to it, and as the clay has dried, obviously it has contracted. So I'm just lightly pulling the clay away, pulling it away from the mold like this. You will kind of feel, the clay releasing from the sides as you push it out, like the clay dropping. Okay, there you have it. That is done. That's our platter done. Now I am going to quickly just clean up the sides. because there's a little bit of unevenness here. I'll do some cleanup at this stage. And because right now my styles are holding up, they're not too soft, I'm able to actually just go over with a damp sponge and clean the edges here. Okay. If there are any other unwanted marks, I'll get rid of them at this stage. A little bit of cleanup will happen now because the clay is nice and soft, right? And then this will be left to dry very slowly under a plastic and covered with maybe a couple of glaze bottles to keep it weighed down. Right? And also while I'm doing this, cleaning the edges, I'm also compressing the edges a little bit. I'm just pressing them in a little bit. I'm pressing them. So with a pinching motion like this, I'm going to just go around the edge here, pressing the edge and cleaning it up at the same time. Let's see. That is done. That's our platter done. It will dry very slowly under a plastic with weights on top, dry for about, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Like I said, I dry it very slowly. And then once it's ready, it will be bisque fired. And I'll maybe make another video where I glaze it with different smugs and underglazes. Let me know if you guys would like to see that. But that's our peacock platter. All done. So that was the video for this week. I hope you guys liked it and found it useful. If you did like it, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye for now.